Podcasts are one of the most fun places and ways to use speaking in your business. While yes, there's nothing that quite replaces the magic of being in the room or on a big stage at a conference, but the intimacy of a podcast where your listener feels like they're behind the scenes of a private conversation, that is just something you can't duplicate on the stage. And it's so valuable for your business. But if you've been thinking about getting on more podcasts over the next year, we need to talk about how to actually get booked. How do you pitch? How do you reach out to podcast producers and hosts and share with them why you should be on a show in a way that doesn't get you sent to the trash folder? In this video, let's dive into how to create the perfect podcast pitch that is going to make you look irresistible to podcast hosts and producers. Hi, my name is Jessica Rasdell, and I'm the public speaking strategist for entrepreneurs. I spent the last 16 years speaking all around the country, and today I work with small business owners and CEO leaders to really use the power of their message and speaking on stages to grow and scale the companies they've worked so hard to build. And it is without a doubt that podcasting should be a part of your speaking strategy if you're a business owner. And are we saying, well, Jess, podcasting isn't really speaking? No. It is. Okay. Podcasting is a type of speaking, especially when you're looking at your speaking strategy for your business. Podcasts for many business owners are going to be more valuable than speaking on a big stage in front of thousands of people. Why is that? Well, podcasting for one is evergreen. So it is this content that is going to live out there on the internet, that is searchable, keyword friendly, and is going to link back to your website, to your products and your services. That means you could spend 30 minutes or an hour today recording a podcast for someone's show, and a potential client will find it a month from now, a year from now, maybe 5 years from now. But another great thing about podcasting is it's going to help you up your skills. You're going to become better at really clearly articulating who you are, what you do, your teaching points, your stories quickly, and doing it in a way that improves your vocalization, the way that you sound on the stage. Because if we strip away this camera, if we take away an audience in the room, we're left with just our voice. And that's what you have with podcasting. It forces you to slow down and get really good at adding that feeling and emotion to your voice, even when there is no visual there to guide you. I think by now we all understand that podcasting is valuable. It's something we want to do. Maybe you've already been doing it, but oftentimes we feel like, well, the opportunities kind of fell on our lap, right? A friend made an introduction, or somebody saw us speaking on a summit and they asked us to be on their show. But if you want to be more intentional with landing podcasts this year, how do you start pitching yourself? Depending on the show, there may be a different process for how to pitch. So let's kind of break down what the pitching process looks like, and then I'm going to tell you what hosts are looking for, and make sure you stay to the end because I'm going to actually share with you some pitches that I have received for the Speak to Scale podcast. Good, bad, ugly, all of them. You can let me know. I'll help you learn from the mistakes that have hit my inbox, and we'll talk about how to find the right opportunities for you. So let's get into really what this pitch process looks like so you can better understand how your pitch is going to fit into it. Every podcast host is going to be a little bit different with how they want to receive their pitches. So you always want to follow whatever the host is telling you. If there's clear instructions for how to pitch, use them. If there's an application, use it. If there's a form, use it. However, if you can't find any of that information on their website, actually go look, please. Then we want to go and send them an email directly. But what should go into that email? How do we make sure that your podcast pitch is standing out and not getting archived? As someone who has pitched herself to be on plenty of podcasts and has a podcast of my own, let me let you in on a little secret. Most podcasts, and I say most, I should have like a big disclaimer here. Most hosts are looking for value, not popularity, but that's not the case with everybody. But for most of us who are business owners, our podcast is a part of our business, and we care deeply about our listeners who tune in every week. I've got about 200 episodes under my belt with the Speak to Scale podcast, and I know that when a pitch comes to my inbox, here's what I'm looking for. I don't really care how many followers you have. It's like icing on the cake, but that's not like the thing that's going to make the deal. Here's what I actually care about. I want to know that, one, you actually have listened to the show. You cannot give the best value to my audience if you don't know who my audience is. Every podcaster has their own style to their show. You need to figure out before you pitch a show, what style is their show so you can see how you fit into that. So the first thing I'm looking for in a pitch is, do they actually listen to my show? The second thing I'm looking for is, do they know my listeners and can they serve them well? I care so deeply about my audience, right? They're the reason I keep producing that show, and they're the ones who are listening. So when I'm considering a guest pitch to come onto my show, I want to know that that person understands my audience, because my show in particular, while we do share stories and we want that behind the scenes information, I also want some tangible tips that my audience can take away, some like bite-sized nugget that they can go implement in their business. So when I'm reviewing a pitch and I see that they've listened to the show and I'm thinking they might know my audience, I'm really going to look at, can they bring value to my people? Are my people, is my group of friends, are my podcast listeners not only going to like this person, but are they going to find this episode valuable? Because as much as I want you to go on all the podcasts and do all the promotions and get all this visibility for your business, the reality is, as a podcast host myself, it costs a lot of time and money to produce a great show. And if I'm going to bring someone on my show who only wants to promote themselves, isn't going to share about the show, and we're not going to have this even exchange of energy where we're building a relationship together as now new business friends, opening the doors for future collaborations, I'm looking to avoid that kind of guest. So in order for your pitch to land on all of those things, right, of you listen to the show, you know the audience, you're going to bring value to the guest, you got to make sure you're pitching the right podcast. You don't want to just pitch every podcast, because then those pitches are not going to land very well, right? So how do we find the right shows for you and your business? Before I answer that question, I have a question for you. If you're watching this video, you likely want to be on more podcasts. Why do you want to be on more podcasts? What do you want podcasting to do for your business? Let me know in the comments. Are you hoping to get new email subscribers, find new clients, generate new leads? I think when we get clear on that question first, figuring out what podcast we should be on becomes a lot easier. So if you're in the comments saying, Jess, I really want to be on more podcasts because I want to get more students into my online course, then my next question to you would be, great, who is that ideal client for your course? When we can identify who that person is, you want to duplicate that audience for podcasting. So we want to find all the shows that that person is listening to. You could do tons of research. You could go down the Google rabbit hole. You could just research your heart out. Or you take a little shortcut and you could just ask your existing clients. This is probably my favorite way to find out about new podcasts, is simply asking my people. So if your goal with podcasting is to get new course students, then my homework to you would be to go into your course community or your email list where all your course students are and ask them. That's going to give you a list of potential podcasts that you can pitch to be a guest on, where you're hopefully going to be speaking in front of your ideal clients. And if you're going to come back at me right now, somebody's going to do it and say, okay, Jess, but those clients in my courses, those people who listen to that podcast, they've already heard me talk about whatever I talk about. They've seen me at a conference. They've heard me on a summit. No, that doesn't change anything. I know it can often feel like we are talking about the same things all the time. And it can feel like, oh my gosh, we have to come up with something new. You do not have to come up with anything new, friend. Our audience, every time that they hear us share our story or break down our framework, they are at a different place in their life and in their business, and they're going to take what they need and leave the rest. And sometimes we need to hear things over and over again before it really clicks. So every time you're getting on a podcast, don't feel like you have to come up with something completely new. One, there's going to be so many people who you have never spoken to before who are hearing from you for the first time, so give them your best work. And two, the people who may have already heard what you're sharing are going to like it even more. It's going to sink a little bit deeper, and maybe they'll even take something away different than they did last time they heard it. So you know why podcasts are important. You know what you should consider when you're going to pitch. You know how to find the ones that are right for you, and really the fact that you don't have to create anything new for these interviews. How do we craft that pitch? Well, let's take a look at a great pitch and a horrible pitch that have both landed in my inbox for the Speak to Scale podcast. Should we start with good or bad? How about I don't tell you and we just start with one and you can tell me whether you think it's the good or the bad. If you don't already know, my podcast podcast is the Speak to Scale podcast, and we are dishing out inspiration and tangible tips to help business owners use speaking to scale their business. It's basically what you're finding here on YouTube, but in an audio format, slightly different. Let's look at this podcast interview, right? So if we go through the stuff we talked about in today's video, we know that my ideal audience, my listeners, are typically business owners who are looking to scale their impact, who are actively wanting to speak on stages and speak on podcasts. This pitch landed in my inbox and it's titled, "I would like to be a guest on your podcast." Okay, this is good afternoon. I wanted to personally touch base with you to introduce myself. You have an impressive podcast. Please feel free to accept my invitation to join your audience for a solid discussion regarding moving abroad and building an offshore call center in Costa Rica. I'm available at your earliest convenience. Thank you for your time reading my email and taking into consideration my resources and unique experience. Was this the good pitch or the bad pitch? This is the bad one. Okay, let's break this down a little bit so we can understand why this does not work. So the first thing I'm seeing immediately is that this person says, "I want to introduce myself," but they don't introduce themselves. So that's just weird. And then they say, "You have an impressive podcast." That statement does not work. When you get hundreds of podcast pitches all the time, somebody saying, "I love your show, you have a great podcast, you have an impressive podcast," that doesn't mean anything to me. You can copy and paste that to every podcaster. I want to hear why you like my show. What was your favorite episode? That's the kind of stuff that lets me know you actually listened and that you didn't just have somebody like search iTunes for business podcasts and you got my name. The second thing here that is just really the big reason this one makes absolutely no sense for my show is that it's pitching to talk about moving abroad and building an offshore call center. That has nothing to do with what the Speak to Scale podcast is all about. This is simply like a spray and pray type of pitch. So on the flip side of that, let's look at somebody who did a different job with their pitch. This one's a little bit longer, so I won't read the whole thing, but I want to share with you the most important parts. So she starts it off with like a quick, "I hope you're doing well. I discovered your podcast. I appreciate the topics you're discussing. I'm an entrepreneur," right? Like says hi, nice greeting, quick sentence about who they are. So I know what this email is that I'm reading. Great. Perfect. That's all I need. I don't need your life story. I don't need a bio. I just need to know who are you so that in my head, I know the tone of the rest of the email. It says, "I'm reaching out because I was listening to Ashley Gartland speaking on your show about guest podcasting. I have a different experience-based approach on this subject that will be valuable to your listeners. I focus on helping potential guests find, research, and contact podcasts that are the right fit for their message." So in this one little paragraph, these 3 sentences, she let me know she's listened to my show. There's one episode in particular that she really likes, but she has a different angle to share on that same subject matter. Like, I love that. And then she goes on to share with me about the work that she does. But this is the part I really want you to pay attention to. In this paragraph, she very clearly outlines that she gets my audience and she's going to help them overcome a struggle. So what she said is, "The interest in guest podcasting is growing, but many guests do not know how to reach podcasts without using an expensive PR agency, insider network, or extensive influence. Your listeners will learn the latest information about a DIY approach to find ideal podcast for their subject. Given your focus on public speaking, I'm hoping you'll consider having me as a guest." So as you can see, just in these few, again, it's like 3 sentences, she shares like, "I know your audience wants to be a guest on other people's podcasts. They don't know how to do it, but I'm going to show them a way they can DIY that strategy, and that really fits in with public speaking." Perfect. When you can take that type of approach with your podcast pitching, you're going to end up on your dream shows without feeling like a phony or feeling rejected from the pitches that never came back. I hope that breakdown helped you see the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to podcast pitching so that you can do better and send more intentional pitches. If you're looking for just one action item that you can take today, I'd say it's research. Go figure out who your ideal podcast listener is and ask them what shows they're listening to. Remember, if you're looking to get more course students, ask your course students what podcasts they're listening to. If you're looking for more Instagram followers, ask your Instagram followers what podcasts they're listening to. That's going to give you a list of podcasts that you can reach out to and start testing out this email process with. See what lands, what doesn't, and maybe what improvements you can make along the way. Pitching is going to take practice, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be. So don't be afraid to send the pitch. Yes, yes, you're going to get some crickets along the way, but you're also going to get some amazing yeses. And you're not going to get any yes if you don't send the pitch. So let's start sending them. While you're getting those pitches out into the world, something else you could be working on is showing up more on social media. That way, when podcast hosts receive your pitch and they go look you up, they see you out there showing up as a speaker. If you're not sure what that looks like, you're going to want to watch this video on how to use social media as a public speaker. It's going to make sure that when those podcast hosts go click on your social media profiles, that's going to help seal the deal to get you on their show.